Hey, welcome back. Right Path Real Estate Radio, live here in the studio now with Jerry Ta, Property Care.
Morning.
That's propertycarehouston.com, propertycarehouston.com, 713-489-7653. Yeah, we actually had a booth next to each other yesterday. So people ask you questions all the time.
I think, I get this one comment almost all the time. It's like, well, I only have one property.
Right.
So I don't really need you yet.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And my question always back is like, so how many, are you trying to buy more?
Yeah.
How many properties you want? And of course the response is, yeah, we want to buy more. We want to get 10, 20, however much it is.
Right.
And so my question back to them is like, so do you think managing your own properties helps you achieve your goal of getting more rentals?
Right.
And then it's like a light bulb just kind of always turns on. It's like, actually it doesn't, because I'm wasting all my time.
Yeah, managing the property.
Right. So, yeah, I'm sure you heard that a few times last night.
Yeah, it is. One of the things that I realized, in fact, you saw me engage with the gentleman yesterday,
right?
Pretty intensely, and I asked for permission to be his coach in that moment, right? And I was defining the difference between a cheerleader, like, yay, come on, keep on doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And he was describing that his mom and dad, they had I think 5 or 6 rentals.
Right.
And I said, are you happy with the lifestyle that your parents have? I mean, would you be satisfied with the lifestyle that your parents have? And I asked, it's a very direct question, right? And it's a simple yes or no.
Right.
And what he first says, well, they're really, I'm like, no, that's not, you're not answering the question I'm asking. I mean, he had a really tough, I had to re-ask it 3 times because his first 3 answers were not a yes or a no. And that's really what it comes, and so I find that's fascinating, is that you're asking a very pointed, direct question that requires a yes or no, and then people come up with all different kinds of, and ultimately, when I kept pinning him down, he said, no, I'm not happy with their lifestyle, right? That's not what I want for myself. Mm-hmm. What I said is like, hey, if you want their lifestyle, do what they've done. If you want something different, you've got to do something different, and doing something different begins with the mindset. You have to change it because you do things congruent with how you think, right?
Right.
So if you want to do things differently, you have to start thinking differently because your thoughts direct your actions. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I feel like a lot of people fail in growing a real estate business. Is it's their mindset that's broken. I mean that. Right. And they leave so much. I find that what they're doing is they're bending over, picking up dollar bills, and $100 bills are flying out of their back pocket.
Right.
And like, no, but you don't understand. I got to pick up this money. I got to pick up this. It's like, no, you don't understand that you're losing based on your thought process that's broken. And so, when you start asking, I think one person, what I would ask people is like, hey, how many hours a month do you spend? And if it's not, because let's say it fluctuates month to month, because they say, well, some months it's more and some months it's less. Okay, then let's average it out over the course of a year. Right. How many hours a year do you spend managing that property?
But then the problem is, though, they don't add it up correctly.
Okay.
And I come back to this story when I first bought my first rental house.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just taught the wrong way.
Right,
also.
of course. Right.
I was taught to like, oh, it's so easy to lease out a house.
Yeah, of course.
You got hundreds of people walking through your door just wanting to lease your house.
Yeah.
I remember.
It's kind of like setting out food for a dog, right? Dog's going to find the food and it's like, no problem.
Yeah. So, I was working, my corporate job, working downtown. I had bought a house in Katy.
Right.
I set up
which is not exactly right around the corner from downtown.
No.
Right.
So I set up this like 5 appointments with 5 people after work. Okay, in rush hour traffic at 7 o'clock.
You're killing yourself to get there, and let me guess, nobody shows up.
Nobody showed up.
I saw that train coming.
and I was just like, it was like, to me, it was just unbelievable. I mean, I confirmed, like, hey, you're showing up, you're showing up,
of course,
and not a single person showed up.
Right.
I called one person, and they're like, oh, we're coming.
Yeah, okay. And then they still never showed up.
And then at that point, I figured out, like, I hate talking to people, like, telling them, oh, we're ready, we're going to show up, and no one shows up, no one's ready to do anything.
Right.
So at that point, I determined that I'm just going to hire an agent to lease out my houses. I'm not getting off work, sitting in rush hour traffic, or the weekends, killing my weekends to try to lease out my house. I'd rather just have an agent do it.
Right.
So that's like one
Well,
example.
what would you say the person that's has their own one rental property, right? What would you say is the average number of hours that they spend, if they were to accurately keep track of it on a monthly basis as an average? Is it 2 hours a month? Is it 3 hours?
I would say 3 to 4 hours.
3 to 4 hours a month.
Okay. Once it's leased.
Once it's leased, right? 3 to 4 hours a month.
Right.
So then it really comes down to is like, okay, what's your time worth?
Right.
And what's amazing, like this guy yesterday, I asked him what's his time worth, and he knew exactly because apparently he works as like a machine shop guy or something like that, and he said, look, I make $56 an hour. I'm like, okay, so your time's worth $56 an hour. So if you're going to spend 3 to 4 hours, so you're spending it takes you $200 a month for you to manage your own property. Right. Or they can do it for $85. I mean, what? I mean, this is a no-brainer. And he goes, wow, I never thought of it like that. Yes, and so the shift is in the thinking. Like, why would you not pay somebody $85 in order to, have somebody else manage the property, and then you save 3 or 4 hours a month of your time, and if your time's worth $50 an hour, you're saving $150 to $200 of your time and paying somebody else $85. That's a bargain.
Yep.
So it's a mindset shift. PropertyCareHouston.com, PropertyCareHouston.com, 713-489-7653. I also love the guy that says, what's the minimum number of properties that you have to have? Yeah, we don't do half properties, don't do thirds. If you're a third owner in a property and you want us to manage your third, but the other guys don't want to hire somebody else to manage their 2/3, we don't break it up in bedrooms. Like if you're doing the Airbnb thing, we won't manage that one bedroom for you, right?
And I tell you, we started off with so many investors that just had one property.
Yeah.
And then they've grown their portfolio.
Of course, right.
From one. I mean, everyone has to start somewhere, and we want to be there from the beginning and kind of teach them the right things to do as far as all their investment property
Correct.
goes.
Yes. All right, so you're listening to Right Path Real Estate. If you want to ask any questions about property management, what does it take to get started with buy and hold properties? How do you get started? Where do you begin? If you've got a property that here's what I find a lot of times is that when you get a landlord, they want to sell their troubled property, right? It's typically a troubled tenant that makes it a troubled property. The property itself, it doesn't do anything, right? I mean, it's just what it is. They're tired of getting phone calls, and so I see investors that want to get out of being an investor of a property, so they'll sell their troubled property. What's funny is if they got rid of that troubled tenant and then fixed whatever the problem that the tenant's normally calling about, right? Then they could put a new tenant in there, and it's no longer a troubled property. In fact, it's funny. You probably know a lot of investors that they own multiple properties. They do that and like, oh, that problem's not a trouble anymore. I want to keep it now.
And my biggest concern is when an owner buys a property with a tenant in place.
Yes.
Like there's a reason why that investor is selling that property, and that's because they're not happy.
They're not happy with that tenant,
and
right?
You're buying into that unhappiness,
right? Yeah,
right away.
Yeah, you're buying somebody else's problem, right?
Like you're happy because you think you're getting day one cash flow.
Oh yeah, but you're not. Yeah, in fact, I think I've asked you in the past about like what's the percentage of people that you've ever evicted that you placed the tenant.
No, I wouldn't say. If I didn't place the tenant, and the owner bought the property with the tenant in there, it's been 100% out of 100% that we either evicted them or they left the property a mess, where they had unpaid rent. Right. It's never ever been a great situation.
And then what's the percentage of the ones that you've placed? I mean, what's your eviction ratio?
I want to say it's as close to 100% as can be.
Yeah, yeah. So you do a something long enough. I mean, you're gonna obviously have some evictions, right? Because life circumstances change. There could be a divorce. There could be people get into financial distress,
and it happens. And right now, I have an owner that's extremely unhappy with me right now. We placed a tenant. He stayed over a year. Yeah. We actually renewed the lease. He's 6 months into the new lease. He lost his job.
Yeah, of course. Now he's in financial distress.
Yeah, and we had to evict them. And, the owner's like, why do we have to evict them? How's your screening process? I'm like, I'm sorry, but...
Yeah. I can't screen for a guy losing his job, right?
Yeah, I mean...
He could afford it, and now he can't, right? I mean, it's like, okay, if he got in a car wreck and he broke his neck, I mean, life circumstances change, and you can't pre-screen for that. This is a good guy. He wants to pay the bills, but when there's no money in the checking account, you write a check. I mean, it's like...
And again, he stayed for over a year, renewed him, everything. He never was late.
Right.
And we had, he lost his job.
Yeah, of course.
He had nowhere to go. We ended up having to evict him. And he left the house, not a terrible mess, but a mess.
Yeah, of course.
And, the owner's happy. But that's, just part of owning an investment property at the same time.
Yeah, life circumstances happen. And when you're providing housing for people, then those kind of things are happening. I mean, it's the same thing happening. Nobody really wants to be foreclosed on, right? So people that buy houses that they can't afford, maybe they can afford it when everything's working perfect in their life. They have just enough income to afford what their budget is. But if some people live on that razor's edge, that if one little hiccup happens, a car wreck, in fact, a car repair, really oftentimes, a new set of tires can wipe people out.
Right. I mean, most people, they always say at least have 6 months of savings. And I mean, if you don't have a job and you really can stay in the house maybe another 6 months and then you're done. It's really less than that.
Right. That's exactly right. Hey, you're listening to Right Path Real Estate. I'm joined live in the studio with Jerry Ta. He's with Property Care. That's propertycarehouston.com. 713-489-7653. 713-489-7653. One other point that we talk about is, there's going to be certain skill sets that people have, and our phrase is "let the 10s do it." And so, if you're not a 10 at property management, and a lot of people don't do a very effective job of analyzing what they're good at, and like I'm pretty good at sales. I'd say that's the thing I'm a 10 at is I really love interacting with a client, looking for win-win scenarios, that kind of stuff. Whether I'm talking with an agent, whether I'm talking to a person who wants to buy one of the houses, or whether we're buying a house, all of that. I love that aspect. That's my 10. And really outside, that's really what I should be doing all day long. The other thing I like doing is I like teaching. I like helping other people achieve success. So those are the two things that I'm a 10 at. Paperwork, man, you get me doing paperwork. I'm not a 10 at that, right? So I have to outsource that. I mean, I've got a great Maribel's. She's awesome at paperwork. She's a high C when it comes to processing, the disc profile, all of that. I'm not a 10 at managing properties. I mean, I know the process, all that. That's not something I'm a 10 at. And what I'll tell you is what I've discovered is most people are not a 10 at that.
No. And a lot of times you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Also at the same time. So you think you're a 10, like, oh, you lease it out and you collect rent and that's it.
Yeah, it's easy breezy.
Yeah. And then everybody that you dealt with in your life, you have perfect people around your life and everyone.
Yeah, I hear fishing's like that too, right? Yeah. You just throw a line out there, catch fish.
Yeah.
No, it's called fishing, not catching fish, right?
Right.
All right, you've been listening to Right Path Real Estate. Join live in the studio, propertycarehouston.com, propertycarehouston.com, 713-489-7653. Give them a call.